a gun over his shoulder, and a kiss for a child. One of the key Houthi rebel leaders knows how to work a crowd. He and his armed guards are here to rally the troops and remind the sparring militant factions who the real enemies are. Death to America, death to Israel and the West, they're chanting. Time and again, the former head of the Houthi Revolutionary Council urges the fighters to stay strong. The Houthis have held out for 5 long years, backed and funded by Iran. This impoverished country is the pawn in the middle of a proxy war against a coalition headed by Saudi Arabia and supported by Britain. These people feel like they're taking on some of the giants of the world. Saudi Arabia, America, even Britain and France. And that's what's uniting them all, this suspicion and this distrust of those political powerhouses. But the rebels have been repeatedly accused by the United Nations of committing war crimes too. There's a UN report which says that the Houthis are recruiting children as soldiers. Is there any truth in this? The gun culture is strong here, but he denies forcing children into the conflict.
No, no, no. These people you see all around you, are they children? The UN takes all their information from our enemies.
We've been given exclusive access to the former Houthi president, one of the commanders who helped the rebels seize control of the Yemeni capital Sana'a 6 years ago. He's now bent on accusing the coalition of a litany of war crimes and takes us to a bridge which he claims has been bombed with the help of British expertise. The British Prime Minister is aware of all this, he tells us. We drove hundreds of kilometres through dry riverbeds, traversing remote and rocky mountain trails, eventually climbing up the last few hundred metres to reach the isolated hillside village community of Washa, close to the Saudi border. We are the first foreigners to reach here, the first outsiders to investigate this attack and see what happened on the ground. Here, an airstrike wrought terrible damage, reducing one home to rubble within seconds. Inside, it was packed with women and children from the Mujali family who were gathering for lunch. 9 people were killed instantly, 6 of them children. Targeting civilian areas is an international war crime. One of the neighbours holds up a baby's bib pulled out of the debris and leggings belonging to one of the toddlers. There is household paraphernalia all around, solar panels, a TV satellite dish, cooking equipment. The attack shocked this community who've become so used to their cries of injustice going unheard.
There were body parts blown onto my roof. I've never seen anything like this before.
We found shrapnel from the bomb still littering the site, and neighbours and relatives showed us pictures they took immediately afterwards. Many of the dead children are too graphic to show, but there are also photographs showing identifying marks on the bomb fragments. We tracked other pictures filmed soon after the attack by Houthi activists and shrapnel collected by them. It appears to be the same, with the same markings. Weapons experts we consulted told us the fragments found here seem to be part of a GBU-12 500-pound fin-guided bomb manufactured in America. A coalition spokesman said they were investigating whether this was an accidental loss of civilian life whilst targeting Houthi leaders and fighters. But this is a poor farming community. No adult men were amongst the dead or injured. There were only 3 survivors from the Washa attack, and one of them's a baby. We crisscrossed the mountain paths again and managed to track down all of them. The first fled to Hajjah city, 130 kilometres away from Washa. Nora told us she was feeding her baby boy when the missile hit. Her 2 daughters were killed. Somehow she and the baby survived. I was screaming for help. I was in shock, she says. The house was destroyed. I was searching for my daughter, but she was dead. Then I saw my sister-in-law, and she was dead too. I just picked up my son and screamed for help. The third survivor is a young teenage boy who we traced to his cousin's house on the outskirts of Sana'a. He has the scars, but he can't remember anything. His cousins can. They pulled him out barely alive and are still traumatized by it.
We only recognized his mother from her torso. That was all that was left of his mother. We only managed to identify one of the small children from his face. It was his brother's son. His arms were cut off. And his sister-in-law, she had no leg and no arm, and she was totally burned.
He said he heard the explosion, but whilst they were scrambling to find survivors, the same jet circled the area for 15 minutes, terrifying them further. The largest independent human rights group in Yemen is compiling a dossier of what they say are war crimes on both sides. They've documented at least 500 coalition attacks against schools, hospitals and other civilian areas, and a handful directly linking British arms manufacturers and suppliers to the crimes.
People who are in authority in UK and could have stopped this from happening, they didn't. They should take their responsibility, and they should stand in front of court, right next to the victims who were injured or killed in this.
The villagers of Washa have very little, but they want justice more than anything, and those responsible for these atrocities held to account. Alex Crawford, Sky News in Washa, Yemen.